Going to welcome Binta Thomas-Paul, who is an educator, leader, and advocate for science education. She holds master's degrees in curriculum and instruction and educational leadership. Spent several years teaching secondary school chemistry. She's a former teacher at Grenada Secondary School and a proud former student of Helen Louise's primary school, Holy Innocents Anglican Primary School. Binta spent part of her childhood in Ladigue before migrating to the United States, where she lives in Texas, doing administrative work as an instructional coach. In 2025, she launched the Binta Thomas Science Foundation, where she serves as executive director, expanding access to science learning and educational opportunities. She is a proud mother of two, shared with her husband, and remains deeply connected to her roots as a daughter of the soil and as the daughter of Richard and Sandra Thomas of Ladigue. Binta, welcome, and share your reflections with Professor McDuffie.
Thank you, Tesfa, and good evening to everyone. It is really an honor and truly a pleasure to be a part of tonight's discussion. I feel like my cup is full. And if you're part of the audience, maybe you share the same sentiments, but this is very wholesome and very enlightening. So, as I listened to Professor McDuffie speak about Malcolm X and his mother, Louise Langdon Little, um, I wasn't just listening as a Zoom participant. I was listening and quite proudly too, as someone from Ladigue, the same village that shaped Louise before she ever set foot in the United States. Growing up in Ladigue, history didn't feel global. It felt very personal. Um, it lived in the stories of elders, and I am thinking about my own mother, my grandmothers, my aunts, and how those stories were passed on, and in the quiet resilience woven in everyday life. And hearing Professor McDuffie explain his triangular research, so connecting the Caribbean, the United States, and the wider Black diaspora made that connection feel very real for me tonight. I literally got goosebumps. It reminded me that what looks like a village on a map can be part of something much, much bigger. What stood out to me, as well as how Professor McDuffie did his work, was the way he built on the work of Terence Wilson and drawing from his book, The Second Battle of Africa. I'm referencing my notes. So the Second Battle of Africa, Garveyism, the U.S. Heartland, and Global Black Freedom. Professor McDuffie helped us see Louise not simply as Malcolm's mother, but as a thinker, an organizer, a woman shaped by movement across borders. Professor McDuffie spoke about the Midwest, a place many people, coming from the Caribbean, so many people probably taking in the program who is in Grenada and probably did not leave Grenada, a place many people don't immediately associate with global Black struggle. And he showed us how it became a hub for Black business. He mentioned human rights efforts and diasporic organizing. He connected that to Caribbean trade unions and a long tradition of Caribbean people fighting for workers' rights. He mentioned dignity, economic independence, just to name a few. So all of that resonated with me. It shows that when us Caribbean people migrate, we do not migrate empty-handed. Um, those of you who have migrated and lived in the diaspora, currently living in the diaspora, this might be very relatable. You migrate, you carry your ideas, values, traditions. So when we hear Malcolm X say, and this is a quote that I stumbled on very recently, and I quote, education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. End of quote. I hear that very differently now. So in Ladigue, education was never just about school, right? It was kind of like a way out. It was about survival, dignity, preparing your children for a world bigger than the island. And that belief lived in our homes, especially through the steady strength of women. Not a loud strength, but steady strength. And I'm smiling because I'm thinking about my own mother. The kind of strength that holds families together and pushes, the generation forward. And seeing Louise in that light, as a Caribbean woman whose values help shape a global voice, made that very personal and deeply personal for me. So now, as someone who lives in Texas and is part of the Black diaspora, this conversation felt like my worlds, the worlds of Grenada and being in the US, meet, like the two worlds merge, especially during Black History Month. So for those of us in the United States, February is celebrated as Black History Month. Um, when stories of struggle and triumph are lifted, it means something powerful to know that a woman from Ladigue is part of that history. And for the people of Ladigue and Grenada, this work should matter. It reminds us that we're not on the margins of history, right? Our villages in Grenada as a whole, our belief in education, our hard work, all of our contributions to global conversations like this one about human rights and Black freedom gives me a great sense of pride, but also a great sense of responsibility. And I think there was a question in the chat. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was from Miss Lois. Where do we go from here? So this feels like a responsibility to keep telling this story, to teach this knowledge, to share this knowledge, and to make sure that Louise Little is remembered not only as Malcolm's mother, but also as our own. So as I close this reflection, I want to pose another question to Professor McDuffie. As we think about the connection between local roots and global impact, how do you see communities like Ladigue playing a role in preserving and sharing Louise Langdon Little's story as part of the Black diasporic history? So I'm going to end my reflection here, and I look forward to Professor McDuffie's response. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Benta. That was amazing. I mean, I'm taking notes. I was taking notes on what you said. I really dug what you said. Like when people migrate, when people from Grenada migrate, they don't leave empty-handed, right? And that's certainly something I was trying to emphasize in my book. If I can, and someone pointed it out in chat, I'm also again emphasizing the importance of Canada to Louise Langdon's story and the ways in which Canada so often falls out of conversations around global Africa. But Sister Binta, if you could be so kind, could you restate that great question that you just posed, please?
I hope let's see. So just thinking about where we go from
Mhm.
here,
Right.
um,
And Ladigue and the
as we
village.
think about this
Yeah.
connection, right,
Yeah.
between local roots and global impact, how do you see communities like Ladigue playing a role in preserving and sharing Louise's story as part of this broader diasporic history? So, um, like, preserving, teaching, sharing. What are some of the things we can
Mhm.
do as a community, as people of Ladigue, to preserve this sort of work and to share this sort of knowledge?
Again, that's a fantastic question. And honestly, frankly, I think you already answered it in your really powerful remarks, right? When you said that you are a child, you are a product of La Digue, that you come from a community who knows who it is, and in no small part through elders, right? Who shared that knowledge, how education wasn't simply about just, for your own individual benefit, but trying to um, uplift, to use a late 19th, early mid 20th century term, or to liberate Black people. And again, the work that you all are doing right now, this, 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 this conference or this evening, the Ladig Communication Heritage and Honors Program, all the IPE, all of this, I think, is doing the work that that you are asking about, and again, focusing on Louise Langdon, again, emphasizing the importance of African descendant women. Yes, it's a story about Malcolm X, but no, but it's really, again, as I emphasized, that this is really a story about Louise Langdon, her brilliance, starting there. That's where the story starts. And again, understanding the local, right? Um, but and this is something that I'm doing in my next book, which is going to be a biography on my great 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 grandfather, who was an abolitionist from Cincinnati, Ohio, and then he traveled to Canada, and then ultimately made his way to Australia. And what I'm doing in this book, but again, tying this to Louise Langdon, is to understand how all of our families, my family, your family, the Langdons, the Littles, we have such powerful histories that are tied to the local, but are always tied to the global. So starting again, knowledge of self. I mean, truly, in some ways, knowledge of who, so if there are any young people or younger people, speak to your elders, right? Speak to your parents, speak to because when those folks have passed, there's so much information that will be lost. But again, a place like La Digue, and I really dug what you were saying, Sister Binta, right? This small village. I mean, I've been there, right? And you know much better than I do. It's this small village on the side of a mountain. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Looking out toward the Atlantic. Oh my God! And then, I mean, just all of that is incredibly powerful. But how small place. Again, it's tied to the history of slavery. It's tied to the history of indigenous people resisting French and British rule. It's tied to the Grenada Revolution. It's tied to again building a new and better world again through Louise Langdon. So I hope I answered your fantastic question.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Binta, and thank you, Dr. McDuffie. We have quite an active chat going on there, lots of comments. Um, we have a very long comment here from Miss Pat Adams, who says that she was part of the inaugural pilgrimage to Grenada to honor Louise Langdon Little in celebration of Malcolm X's 100th birthday. And it was indeed a spiritual journey to her birthplace in Ladigue, and she's looking forward to being back in May. I believe we also have with us this evening Miss Pauline Patterson, who was part of that delegation that was in Ladigue earlier on this year. And Miss Patterson is a member of the Institute of the Black World 21st Century and is the assistant to Dr. Ron Daniel. So thank you for being with us this evening, Ms. Patterson. We also see in the chat Mrs. Decima Williams. She was on with us earlier, who is the head of Grenada. So thank you for all of you who made it to be with us this evening. We have a question here from Anne, who is saying, can you give us a sense of how Louise's upbringing in Grenada influenced her Garveyism, her Garveyite commitments? If she's asking if you think that was a natural occurrence, if it was organic, or do you have a sense of how her being in Grenada informed her Garveyite commitments?
Again, great question. Without question, growing up in La Digue, I've said already, again, foundational to cultivating her global Black radical vision. The fact that she was multilingual, right? Speaking English, speaking French, speaking patois. Um, so the fact that again that people are multilingual, and if there are folks in the States that are on this, You know, there's that joke, if you speak three languages, you're trilingual. If you speak two languages, you're bilingual. If you speak one language, you're an American. And the fact that she was multilingual, again, that lends itself to a kind of cosmopolitanism. Also important to keep in mind that her family, especially her uncle Edgerton, um, that's why she moved to Montreal, in part because in search of opportunities that she couldn't find on the island. But she moved to Montreal, Canada, to be one to find employment, and of course she worked as a seamstress, as also as a domestic in a white household. But she joined her uncle, and her uncle Edgerton was a hardcore Garveyite. It was through her uncle, through her family, that she came into the UNIA. Edgerton Langdon, again, a child of Mary, Jane, and Jupiter Langdon, again, hardcore Garveyite, and his son was a longtime leader of the Montreal UNIA, which is still open today. I had the privilege about 10 years ago when I visited Montreal. I mean, I've been there since, but in 2016, I visited the Montreal UNIA, and the Langdon name is famous um, within the Montreal Garvey movement and beyond. So again, importance of family, these La Digue connections. So yes, a kind of organic um, connection. Also, going to her school again. Yeah. So I'll stop there.
Thanks. And I just want to take the moment here to share a comment from one of our participants, Lois Baker, and she would have been with us on one of our lectures previously. She says here, learning more about her forces us to ask, where do we go from here? What can we do as a people to revitalize movements, get to improving the lives of our people locally, regionally, and globally? Discovering our activism, especially now, given the current state of affairs. A great presentation.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you all want me to respond or just say thank you.
That would be up to you, Professor McDuffie, but
Uh-huh. There's another comment, Marie, lower down from Susan Jones. Hmm.
you want me to go ahead and share that one as
Yes,
well?
go ahead and share that one as well. Thank you.
Okay, so
Yes.
Susan says, thanks for such an enlightened discussion. It was truly informative and it resonated with me as a true Caribbean woman who believes that our history is crucial to who we are as a people and should be shared especially today with our young people. However, it is almost midnight where I am. Thanks again and looking forward to more discussions in the future. Pleasant evening to all.
Mhm.
Oh,
There's
fantastic.
another more recent comment also from Paula Patterson, whom I referred to earlier as the assistant to Dr. Ron Daniel, who was part of that pilgrimage celebrating the 100th birthday of Brother Malcolm. And she says, thank you so much. Truly an honor to be here in community. To each and every one of you, continued blessings to everyone involved in the sacred work of the preservation and uplifting of our powerfully inspiring history. Thank you for your impeccable work, Professor. Looking forward to future gatherings, and I will share upcoming info for May. Blessings. Thank you, Ms. Paula Patterson there. Folks, I have also put a link to Amazon to Dr. McDuffie's book. So take a look in the chat. You'll see his book link there. I highly recommend it. It was on my reading list for my comps and quite basically everything you've ever written about Helen Louise Langdon was on my comps list. So I'm very, very grateful for your work as well. Um, do we have any more questions from participants? Mm. Anne Wom is saying, going along the lines of having a Black professor researching and presenting our story. Thank you and keep up the great work. We need to hear more and many others to follow your work. Yes. Mhm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I guess maybe as we start to wrap up, and my final thoughts, we've talked about Africa, and as you all noted, I am the director of the Center for African Studies at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. I was just in West Africa last month, a few weeks ago, Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and I can't stress the importance of learning and knowing about Africa, knowing about the continent. Um, that I mean, for me, it's all about Africa. And knowing what's going on right now, the upheavals, I mean, there's some really exciting movements, current affairs happening, especially across the Western Sudan, Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore. But beyond just kind of famous men or states, what young people are doing. I was in Kenya, July 2024, I arrived the evening where the government shot and killed several of those protesters. It was a really tense time, but what I'll never forget was how young people were organizing against injustice, organizing against the finance bill pushed forward by President Rota, who's a U.S. ally. I mean, I won't go into all the detail, but what was so impressive was how young people they took to the streets, and also they took to their phones, and they were having some really amazing conversations about how do we create a better world, right? How do we create a better world? And again, I keep saying the same thing. I think this is what Louise Langdon was all about. And again, her story, yes, it starts in Grenada, but in some ways, it really starts in Africa, right? Right? It really starts in Africa. Brother Malcolm, again, both sides of his family. Apparently, there's a Muslim connection on both sides of his family, right? Right? Again, that's not in the autobiography of Malcolm X, but we know it from oral histories. And again, going back to the importance of knowing who you are, knowing your family, speaking to elders, right? hmm And let me just see. Sorry. Um, yes, and also to Brother Ron Daniels out there and the Institute of the Black World. Thank you for being here. Y'all are doing some amazing work, and I look forward to the opportunity to connect with you, and as well as, of course, my brothers and sisters in Grenada. I can't wait until I return. It's been 10 years. Cannot wait
Can
until
I
I get
tell
back.
you when you're coming back?
Uh,
We're having a big celebration in 2028 to culminate my PhD. So
that sounds
I'm
wonderful.
giving it,
I'll
and
be there.
it's good.
Advance
It's,
notice.
I'll
it's
be
going to
there.
be around this time of the year, and it's
Yeah.
going
You
to
know
be
what?
along the lines of basically what we're doing here, just celebrating the work. So this is your invitation now, early. You can
God
plan
willing.
for that.
Amen.
Yes.
Yeah, God willing, I'll be there. And I want to stress to the audience that the next generation of scholars like Sister Tesfa, soon to be Dr. Peterson, right? In a couple of years, the work that you all are doing, taking this work, thinking about Louise Langdon in new exciting directions, building off of what's been done, but you all are taking in ways in which me and others never even imagined. So I can't wait to read your stuff and again to see how you all move the conversation forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor.
You're welcome.